Welcome to the Cinephile Hissy podcast, the tirade-filled movie debate podcast hosted by two film critics, cool dads, and struggling teachers. I'm Don Shanahan.
And I'm Will Johnson.
We're new. Are we new anymore? This is 10 episodes in. We're seasoned, and we're damn glad to have you folks. This is all for tantrum's sake, where shared passions and high fives wash away any place for hate. In the end, we encourage you all to love what you love. But for now, the gloves are off and the hissy fit is on, and I have a feeling this one's going to get chippy. This week, in honor of Cruella coming out on Disney Plus, which feels an awful lot like a little Joker Jr., we're going to talk about Todd Phillips's Joker from 2019. It is recommended as by me, Don Shanahan, as the lover, and our format is this. The recommended lover goes first. They get 5 uninterrupted minutes to shower their praise and state their high-minded case, which I'm going to enjoy. The hater, Will Johnson. Phoenix, Arizona. I don't have his address or his phone number, but you can find him on Twitter and badmouth him all you want. Let's get the intel stuff going from 2 years ago right back. Follows with 5 uninterrupted minutes of their own to present their counterpoints with any manner of intellectual scorched earth. After that, we open up for 15 minutes of shared conversation where the hissy fit really gets chippy. We hope you've got your judge's scorecard, and we hope you skin all of your Dalmatian puppies in time for Cruella coming out whenever it does. Folks, it's not just Cruella, it's the Joker tonight. Let's go.
Yeah, I want to clarify.
Here it comes.
That I recommended Joker because we were looking for stuff to discuss on the show. Cruella was coming out, and I noticed that it's kind of like Joker for tween girls, it seems. And also, not surprising to anyone who knows me as a Marvel shill, but I was looking for films that I hate, and Joker is one of the films I really hate. And so I recommended it. The fact that you're a lover of it both doesn't surprise me and disappoints me in many ways. So, but I just want to make it clear that I recommended this because I let the hate flow through me.
Ooh, you're not just a Marvel shill. You're the thing that Disney bought that goes with it. All right, I see where you're going. All right, take your $2 billion, buy your Lucasfilm, and have a good time. All right. I'm firing up the timer. 5 minutes of Joker. All right.
Got it.
So with this movie, I mean, there has been in 2 years, and even before this movie came out, because I remember the press wave of when it debuted in Venice and all the, that festival screening stuff always gets things hot and bothered in a hyperbole fashion. And there were all kinds of hot button words that were branded, I should say, into the film flesh that was Todd Phillips's Joker. Some of them were complimentary, some of them were damning, but they really, before this movie came out, it didn't feel like those marks were going to rub away. And there's a lot of fiery adjectives you can go for. There's external controversy that, a lot of people kind of read a zillion things into this film. And, there's trigger warnings and projections and every angle in the world that's been spun on Joker then, before, then, and now. And I feel like when I kind of took this whole movie and I kind of centered it to where I can do, the one word that really stood out to me was gall. And according to dictionary.com, there are 4 possible meanings of the noun that span impudence, severity, bitterness of spirit, and rancor. And to go a little cruder, the Urban Dictionary just goes straight out and says audacity, balls, or something risky. And for me, the Joker was every single one of those things. The fancy stuff in dictionary.com and the Urban Dictionary. For me, the Joker kind of had the gall to kind of go to an R-rated level of violence, which you didn't get a lot. I mean, you got your Deadpool stuff for playful fun, and you got your Kick-Ass stuff for playful fun, but to do it with a straight face and to do it with a mean streak, I was impressed with. The performers had all the gall in the world to attempt generating sympathy for a villain and show those kind of connective actions in all their uncomfortable kind of cruelty. And to me, that's also set off a lot of things in terms of can you make the Joker a sympathetic hero, or can you even try, or a sympathetic villain, I should say. And the Joker, in the same time, kind of had the gall to shove away all the sunny glibness of what comic movies have been up to that point, and kind of at their peak popularity, because this was 2 years ago. We're coming off of Endgame. Like, comic books were at a heroic high, and here comes this brazen movie to kind of just smear all that and go, fuck it, we're going dark. And the writers kind of took that opportunity to have, again, the gall to kind of place a maze of social commentary trails, and not really to borrow from any kind of comic source, and to kind of very much be revisionist in terms of what you can do with Joker. And that's ballsy and that's difficult. And the director of the studio kind of had the gall to do this on a, and put it as an awards contender. I mean, put it out there in the competitive film festival circuit, right before dropping it into big audiences, and, just into the general existence. You have this. At the time, we were all kind of going, wait, you got Jared Leto's Joker, which, isn't the best, but it's out there. What are you doing with another one? And we know DC likes to do Elseworlds kinds of things, and there was potential for all that. But, for me, every fleck and pore of this movie is drenched in gall. And I kind of love that. And because you got, tears and bloody smears, you have the insolence that kind of becomes drastic. And for me, I couldn't take my eyes off the movie. And there's kind of a twisted pair of narrative vines, one that descends in evil and the other one rising out of motivated malice. And I know the Joker's origin story, comic wise, is something that is, I don't want to say taboo, but something that isn't always taken care of or really presented, or it jumps around, or it doesn't. It's on loose ground because it's meant to be kind of ambiguous. And now that we can kind of be spoiler warning and go 2 years later on this movie, I'm of that ilk of people who watch this movie and think it is all in his head, and they never leave that room that we see him at the beginning and the end of the movie running out of. And I know that's a ballsy fan theory to kind of buy into and drink the Kool-Aid on, or in this case, some nice, dark, non-alcoholic beer on. But I buy that because, and when I go there and think about, well, if could they do that, and have they done that? And if Todd Phillips and them, and who's been very coy even 2 years later about not saying what's good and what's solid about this movie. And I love that ambiguity because they went for it with an Oscar-winning performance from a darn good actor and got it. And then they took this movie where you don't know what's really firm and what's really legit, but all the way it's sinister and evil, and that's ballsy. And not a lot of movies have the balls to go there. Not a lot of the movies have the gall to put that out there, and I was impressed. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I still give it a big old 5, but at the same time, I gave it a 5 because of effort, and I gave it a 5 because of what it could do to kind of change things. Never expected this to connect to Batman. Never expected this to be a DCEU thing. I was just kind of pleased that it took something I wholly couldn't expect and went there. Is it Scorsese borrowed light? Yeah, probably. We'll get to that in 15 minutes. But my 5 minutes showing us some love are up.
So
Yeah.
in a cartoon or in a goofy movie, like when someone gets hit in the head and then their eyeballs they roll in the back of their head so much and so far they end up turning around and around and around, and it looks like those little things in gambling machines, whatever they're called. That's how much I was rolling my eyes at what you just said. So,
Here we go.
uh,
5 minutes uninterrupted. Excuse me.
sorry, I just had to put that in there because Disney pays me to say these things.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Right.
Anyway,
Get your clock. 5 minutes. Fire away.
okay, so sometimes a film does become more than just a film. I remember walking into the press screening of Joker. I was already coming off a besiegement of hot takes and outrage over what the Joker could do and what it represents in this challenging social climate we find ourselves in the United States. As I was wanded by security, which is not a joke, I was actually wanded by security for this movie. That's how real the word of mouth was on how damaging this movie could be. All of that flow of information sped into my head, and it made me think I'm living in a cultural moment. I'm not simply seeing a movie. And that is where the disappointment comes in because all the hubbub and the wine ranging publicity is much ado about nothing. Joker's not going to make you root for a psychopath. It's not going to make you take arms against the elite either. It won't inspire you to commit murder, and it will certainly not make you find sympathy for the devil, or at least his jester. No, it will probably entertain you. It may even shock you. But also, it could surprisingly bore you. It really bored me. For Joker, despite the whirlwind of news around it, was a fairly simple, mundane origin story, like many comic book movies that came before it. And like many, quote, I'm using my quote fingers, edgier comic book movies from yesteryear, Joker makes the same mistake those films did by assuming ramped up intensity equals compelling drama, or that style overcomes a lack of substance. Yes, Joker is a beautifully crafted imitation of Scorsese's New York circa the mid 70s. I think it takes place in 82, but it is still just that, an imitation. Joaquin Phoenix does go to some Christian Bale like levels of horrifying body disfigurement and dedication turned up to 11 that makes his performance realistic, but he does so to service an underwritten, predictable shell of a person. The most shocking revelation coming out of Joker was how incredibly one note Phoenix's performances was, despite the intense dedication. I believe because of this, audiences have tricked themselves into thinking Phoenix's devotion automatically means the film is good. But sadly, no one else involved in front of or behind the camera provides the film with the same dose of energy Phoenix gives his ironically boring anarchist. The screenplay, which was co-written by Joker's director Todd Phillips and Scott Silver, is pretty thin. Both men have separately been nominated for Academy Awards writing for savvier material, especially in the case of Phillips, whose Oscar-nominated screenplay for Borat was a thrilling satire of Bush America. Phillips, both in script and direction, does not provide any reason for setting this film in 70s Gotham, what is often considered the NYC of the DC universe. There are only superficial eye winks and head nods to cultural artifacts of that time, and any attempt to mimic the malaise of the Carter years, with mentions of funding cuts across the board and an impending recession, are taken at their word and barely shown. The decay and scum of Gotham is simply window dressing for a stage play. You never at any point feel the intensity of that environment. In Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, the two Scorsese films Joker most wants to emulate, you could smell the foul corners of the city. You could taste it on the tip of your tongue, for better or worse. Joker simply tells you a certain place is bad as opposed to making you actually feel it. We're adding this superficial setting to an already thin screenplay. You get Phoenix doing a lot of prancing around in service of mostly nothing. Now, I could go into this. I may go into this in the 15-minute section about who's going to die on what hill of who's the best Joker, blah, 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 blah. And there's a lot of stuff that the movie kind of needs Batman, but also to be legitimate doesn't need Batman. So it's kind of in this weird paradox, because to have Batman in it would sully the story, but to not have Batman in it, you don't have the Joker has anyone to work off of. He's not a foil to work off of with anybody. So basically, Phoenix has virtually no one to play off of. That's a big factor. There are some other people. Robert De Niro is criminally underused. The always dependable Frances Conroy is kind of in and out. You never know if she's telling the truth or not. Basically, they have a lot of talent that they don't utilize. There are other revelations and traumas that are uncovered in the film that I won't go into due to spoilers, which we'll maybe talk about spoilers in the 15-minute section. But needless to say, you know too much about why Arthur Fleck, who is Joaquin Phoenix's character, becomes the Joker that you can't garner sympathy or hate for him. He's just there. And frankly, simply being crazy is not a strong enough motivation to carry over 2 hours of screen time. That's all. I had one more thing, but we'll talk about that in the 15-minute section.
Good call.
Once again, Don knows how to finish those 5 minutes up nice and succinctly, and I just go, oh!
Well, I mean, I put the timer on. I get the joy of watching the clock go down. So no. I tell you what. To go back to the beginning of your 5, I'm right there with you. That all of the pre-hype that came with this movie, which I'm really good at avoiding. You know me, I'm not into trailers. I don't read other people's reviews until I write my own. Obviously, some of this was a little bit unavoidable, and you obviously had the news stories of just we had Aurora, Colorado back when Heath Ledger and The Dark Knight came out, and the imitating crowd, and unfortunately Twitter being the cesspool of bullshit people that it is, and the whole incel, demographic of audience is an issue that is out there that unfortunately gets incensed by lots of things. I'm with you. This movie did not, what I want to say, this movie did not become the firebrand that it was over. I guess what I'm saying is the outrage was overhyped, and you're right. And I don't think, while the outrage was overhyped, I don't think the film was. I think the film was still courageous enough to do what it wanted to do, and I'm okay that there's no hero here. I felt no, like all the things you mentioned in your opening five, I felt none of that. I didn't get my incel trigger busted. I didn't feel like a less of a man. I wasn't gonna get pitchforks and guns and turn into the Purge over here on Chicago. I had no sympathy for that character, and by the time the movie ends, I don't want it, and that's fine. I thought all of it was par for the course and by design in a good way, because had the movie done that, then we are talking about deeper portrayals, not just of canon, but just even of performance, and even of properness, and even of the triggers that so many people get into.
Right.
So I'll
Yeah.
back you there.
Yeah. And another thing, let's just take out the cultural situation.
Uh-huh.
Another criminal of this film, and maybe you'll agree with me on this.
Okay.
And I noticed this problem recently because I actually went back to the theater twice, and I know you went back to the theater as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I went as a paying customer, so unlike press screenings, I had to watch trailers. So I saw a bunch of trailers I didn't want to see, like Suicide Squad and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, this was before I met you or I knew you a lot. So I
Yeah.
was still watching trailers for like hyping myself up for stuff.
Uh-huh.
So let's just take out the cultural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The marketing for this film really didn't help because the trailers were pretty much ABC storytelling of the entire movie.
I can
Um,
agree with that. Seeing the trailers after the fact, yeah, they gave way too much away.
like Joker had pretty much been over advertised to death.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were minimal surprises when you watch the movie because you're like, oh, I saw that in the trailer.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So me going into it being entirely surprised was awesome for me, and
so
a
maybe that
experience that
has,
helped a ton.
maybe that helps, but also I don't know how close you are to, how close are you to the other iterations of the Joker?
Oh, I mean, I'm well versed. We've talked about having a future show on The Dark Knight, and obviously Heath Ledger has his mantle where he's going to have a pedestal and a place in cinema history, and earned one, in my opinion. I think Jack Nicholson. If we're going to talk about hills to die on, I love Jack Nicholson because I feel
Yes.
like he is the deranged enough yet still clever and dangerous. Like, he's not all ham. And of course, you and I are both 60s Batman fans, where Cesar Romero is a hoot.
Yes.
And unfortunately, and I don't know I don't know how the Marvel show feels about this, but to me, the most ultimate Joker that's ever been done is still probably Mark Hamill, and it's just his voice and how he's drawn.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So
What's your hill?
let me
Yeah.
break down my takes on the other Jokers. Jared Leto, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about that one. I don't think he's as bad as everyone says.
No,
I
but he
don't think
doesn't
he's
make.
great either. He didn't
Yeah.
like make a stamp on the culture because we have to remember one thing. There is actually more actors who have won Oscars for playing the Joker than I believe
Mhm.
there are actually black male actors who've won Best Actor. So
Ooh.
it's a it's a role
Yeah.
that, like, for some reason, people, and this is what I talked about with the dedication part. I think people see the dedication to the role as good, and not the role itself. But let me go on to the other Jokers real
Okay.
quick.
Just to
So
be the Oscar stat guy, there's been
yeah,
more African American lead males than two Joker winners. Don't worry.
okay. I wasn't sure how
Yeah.
accurate that was because how many Best Actor? Maybe we can do this as a
Well,
side project. But
you got Forrest Whitaker. I can name three off the top of my head already. You've got Forrest
okay,
Whitaker. You've got Denzel Washington. You've got Jamie Foxx, and if you want to go far enough back, you got Sidney Poitier. So you've got four, which doubles the two Jokers for sure.
got it.
Without
Okay,
me forgetting others. So
I must be thinking of something else. So Twitterverse
probably
out
like
there,
Hamlet or Sherlock. Like you take classic iconic characters or
right?
even presidents, and there's probably been more Jokers than those. So
Fair enough. So let's
yeah,
just pretend I didn't say what I said because it sounds completely ignorant and stupid. But you know what? That's what I am, ignorant and stupid. So, anyways, let me talk about the other Jokers.
he's got that on tape, and I just want you to know that that is on there, and it's going to be in the show.
Yes. Okay, so I kind of have three: Caesar Romero, Jack Nicholson, and Heath Ledger are kind of
Yeah.
what I have. Caesar was pure ham. He had no
Mhm.
motivation. He had no motivation other than to be deliciously evil.
Yeah.
That's just kind of what he was. A very thinly drawn character, but I think the actor knew how to nail,
Mhm. Fit the show
what
too,
was good. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Nicholson's Jack Napier was pretty cut and dry. He was a calculating mob captain looking to move up in his organization.
Mhm.
The becoming the Joker made him more creative and bonkers,
Yeah.
and his unpredictability made him unforgettable. Now the thing is, I don't die on the Ledger hill. I think he's fantastic. I
Yeah.
don't know. I still don't know who is the best Joker, but
Mm.
the
I'm
the
the
thing
Nicholson guy.
the thing about Ledger's Joker is Ledger's take was defined largely on how much we didn't know about him.
True.
His countless origin stories that he tells throughout this film are of the Dark Knight are obvious lies. His purpose was simply to
Right.
be an agent of chaos. That's it.
Right.
Um, it wasn't important for us to dig into who he was, like what his motivations were. I think sometimes there's a theory out there in the horror world that the more you explain about the monster,
Mhm.
the less uh, effective they are
I can agree
at
with that.
being a monster.
Yeah.
So the problem with this film is not only is it an origin story, which is something that comic book films have learned to stop doing because they are um, the audience is already generally ahead of the origin story.
I agree with that,
They
especially a character
uh,
like this that's been done to death.
right. So not only is Joker an origin story, but it's also a complete breakdown of what makes the Joker who he is. And I just don't think, based on the other iterations, including
Mhm.
Jared Leto, you
Yeah.
need that. I think it lessens his impact.
Yeah, I think a
Um,
Joker that just shows up and tears shit apart is a lot more fun than because even that's probably a piece of Nicholson's Joker that's done too much is we get Napier for a good long while, and of course the dumbass move of making him Joe Chill, completely unnecessary, in comic, out of comic, or otherwise. But the rest of Nicholson, in terms of just characterization, is fine. But I'll grant you that. Like, I don't think we need a Joker origin story. It's more fun when he just shows up, and that's kind of and because there's never been a definitive one done other than hints here and hints there, like stand up comics and Killing Joke stuff like that. That even this movie, I think it's lying to us just as much as Ledger's monologues do, just for 2.5 hours. Because I think the whole like I said, I buy that theory that we're just watching him make shit up, Kaiser Soze style in this therapy room before he kills the woman, runs out the door, and goes back for all we know in a modern Gotham and not 1980 Gotham at all. Like I
right.
I really do think the rabbit hole is that deep, and I'm cool with that.
Yeah. I don't know. I am kind of the comic book movie guy. I give them all a shot. I
Oh, me
mean,
too. Totally.
despite the fact that I don't like a lot of the DC extended universe, I've seen them all. I
Hmm.
give them a shot. I'm happy to sit, as you've seen with our prior episode on Justice League. I
Hmm.
will sit and watch the entire 4 hour and 8 minute cut of Justice League because I'm willing to give these things a shot. And that's another thing I have here.
Okay.
It's another problem I have with this movie is okay. We are having the cultural backlash right now,
Hmm.
similar to other popular things. For some reason, Lord of the Rings doesn't get this, but let's take Titanic, for example, right?
Okay.
Titanic was the highest grossing film of all time.
Hmm.
Everybody loved it. Everybody
Hmm.
saw it a trillion times. It won a trillion Oscars. But then something started to creep in with its popularity. Suddenly it
Yeah,
was, well, actually, Titanic sucks.
I
Okay, first of
know.
all, sir, first
People
of all, that's not
people do that.
true.
Yeah,
First of all, that's not true. Titanic is an amazing movie.
sure is.
And there's a reason why people saw it is because it was an amazing movie. Now, I understand the idea of like something being popular is um, trash. I mean,
Mm.
that's why there's hipsters out there who are like, well, I like that band before they released their big album.
Mhm.
We're having that problem now with Marvel
Yes, we
because
are.
of Marvel's success. Now, that's why any news story right now, recently, Emily Blunt came out and a lot of her stuff was taken out of context where she was talking about how superhero films are exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, and
I read her
see,
full context and I found the backlash to it empty and dumb.
right. But here's the thing. People latch onto that because it's clickbait, because there is
Oh
kind
gosh,
of
it
this
is.
there is this consensus now that because of the popularity of the superhero film, it's not real cinema, it's
Uh-huh.
trash, popular trash, blah
Yeah.
blah blah. We're forgetting the fact that majority of people have seen these films because they are so popular and wide ranging and acceptable.
Completely
So,
agree.
so the reason I bring this up is because I think some of the um, cultural discussion about Joker was talking about how it was, quote, real cinema because it was edgy and it was
Mhm.
real and it wasn't like the superhero films that Marvel puts out. I don't think that qualifies it automatically as a great film
No, I
because
agree with
it
that.
tries to mock other things. To me, this film is trying too hard to be taken seriously. So
Okay.
much so that they're basically copying Scorsese. And don't get me started on Scorsese. Now, now here's the thing. We've talked about this in prior episodes. We talked about
Yeah,
this in the Justice League episode. The reason why Marvel is so successful is because they know the line to straddle.
I
They
agree.
know that the idea of superheroes is so absurd that they never take themselves too seriously, and they kind of act like mythology, where it's like, I'm not going to take this story too seriously, but I'm going to be emotionally invested. The problem with stories like Joker and Justice League and things like that is they're trying so hard to legitimize something that doesn't need legitimizing in the first place.
I see where you're
That
going. But at the same time, I feel like because this movie is jerking your chain and twisting things the way that it does,
right,
and doing it in a pretend serious way, or even in a look at me, I'm going to be ballsy looking cinema way. I
right.
think all the while, because I do go back and go, this is Todd Phillips. This is old school. This is road trip. This is Hangover. He's I take him to be the guy pulling the puppet strings to fuck with us, and I'm very okay with that. And I think this is him thumbing his nose, not just at the squeaky clean stuff of Marvel, but like, I'm going to make something dark and over serious just to make fun of people who think things need to be dark and over serious. Like, I think he's all in on full manipulation front to back of this movie. And
Really,
I
really.
do. I don't think he made this just to be Green Book, to be, Peter Farrelly. I can make a serious movie now. Look at me. I don't think he was doing this for awards bait. I think he was doing this because I got this character who fucks with people. And I can make a movie about this character to fuck with people more and have a damn good time doing it with a great actor, going all out. And I think that because of how coy Phillips is in, because I think I think another person would make this movie, and I hate to say the Russos, but would just over explain every single possible thing about it and all the press junkets in the world of like, oh, well, this is what we were going for. This character was actually really doing this. Like the Russos over explain their own movies all the time. Phillips won't, and I love that because the ambiguity he wants to sell is in it front to back, in it out of it, and I think that is the line that it toes in a good way because like we're sitting here bitching about it and arguing about it on how serious it is when watching them go, I'm not even serious about being serious. I'm just doing this to mess with you and have a good time with this character. And because we're
Mm,
not trying to plug this into the DCEU, this is a one-off. All the people who are begging for a sequel, which is likely studio execs because this movie made a ton of money, or want this to plug into Robert Pattinson, no, thank you.
oh yeah,
Let
yeah,
this
I
be its
agree
own,
with
let
that.
this be its own entity. Let this be its own, rug pull of a movie. And I think it could hang with that.
I okay, I kind of agree with you. I think of this and Black Panther as films that surprisingly,
That's just the 15-minute time. We can keep going. But yeah.
yeah, I think both this and Black Panther were two comic book films that had some honesty behind them. There was no intention to make like a best picture movie out of
Yeah.
either of these. I
Yeah.
agree with that. Um,
But
I
I think Warner Brothers, by putting this in the festival circuit and running it as an awards contender, was definitely a part of the power move of going, let me take my rug pull of a movie and still shove it up your ass as prestige just because you'll fall for it. And I think the people that fall for it are all the pre-hype people who get triggered on Twitter. It's the film bros, who gets this movie is one of the million club on Letterboxd, where this Parasite, Pulp Fiction, and Inception, I think, are the four that have a million reviews.
Which is insane because most of those movies blow.
I know.
Uh,
Those are the ones that are cherished by the film bro culture, which is not even cinephiles like you and me who see art top to bottom trash and treasure. These
right.
guys just narrow it to, I'm gonna like something like you said, avoiding popularity or sentiment because it's not cool or not edgy to like popular and sentiment.
So you think, okay, this is interesting because I think we
Yeah.
both
I
feel
got a
that the
theory
audience.
from a buddy here. And I'll do this. I'll name drop my guy, Emmanuel Noyes at Eman's Movie Reviews. He's got a good theory where this is all in the head. And I'll send it to you and put in the show links or something like that. But keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think we both agree that the audiences are duped.
Oh yeah.
but you're but you're
Absolutely.
but you're saying that it is an intention of the film to do it,
Yeah.
whereas I'm
I do.
saying that it is like the artifice of the film that's doing it, which
Okay.
I find is interesting because in the end
Yeah.
we're both admitting that audiences are getting probably the wrong idea out
Hell
of what
yes.
this film is.
Absolutely.
I find that very interesting
Yeah.
because
You
I
you
don't.
you take that reaction and hate it. I take that reaction and go, nice job.
Yeah, see, I don't trust. I don't trust the audience's reaction to
Well, I
this,
don't trust him either.
and
True.
I don't trust the filmmaker's intentions. I'm sorry, Todd Phillips is fine.
Yeah.
I, I don't hate Todd Phillips or anything. You're right. I do not think he's doing a Farrelly Brothers thing with Green Book.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think he's got that level of talent to play something that subversive. I just can't buy
Mm,
that.
I think you can.
I don't think he's that good of a director or a
Yeah.
writer.
Oh no,
He's
like yeah, from a writing and directing standpoint, obviously he's borrowing, like you said, some artifice and some mise en scene, from other filmmakers and other places, and borrowing it in the right measures in the right places. And then writing wise, yeah, this movie's full of holes, but I think it's intentionally full of holes because they're spinning the way they're spinning. Yeah, this movie, deservingly so, did not win directing and writing, things like that. Consider it just because they're taking a new edge to different things. But no, this is Joaquin, and this is Hildur Godar's music, which and yeah, the things that are honored in this movie earned it. But Phillips, and I will not give Phillips that much credit either. I'll give him credit because he's fucking with us, but I won't give him Scorsese level. I made this perfect, amazing piece of cinema thing. Hell no.
but that's the thing is a lot of people
Oh yeah.
maybe not on the level of a Zack Snyder where everyone worships him like a deity, but
Oh, but it's close.
it's close because
Yeah.
everyone assumes that this guy is like God tier. And I'm
Hmm.
just like, okay, you know what? First of all, I've never really been into the comedies that he did, so I wasn't
Yeah.
really like infatuated with him in the first place. I don't know. I think it's interesting that we have that perspective that the audience is definitely not taking from it what it should, but it's
Hmm.
interesting that we can. It's kind of like how when people read the Bible, they get different interpretations of the same text.
Sure.
I think it's funny that we're basically seeing the same result, but in different. It's manufactured differently, or we feel it's being manufactured
Yeah.
differently. So I find that pretty fascinating.
No. I gotta admit, I do think a hand in that for me was going in unhyped.
Yeah, that definitely changes some things.
Mhm.
I'm learning that. Like I said, I had to see some trailers, and now I have such a skeptical eye to trailers.
Yep,
Like
that's the thing.
when I went to see Spiral, the Book of Saw,
Mhm,
there was a red band trailer for Suicide Squad. Now I have purposely avoided that because I love James Gunn,
mhm.
and even though I'm not a huge DC guy, I have faith in that director and writer.
Yeah,
But I got to say, when I saw the trailer, I was immensely disappointed because I was just like I wish I didn't see any of this because I could tell already it's selling the wrong thing. Um, And that was my issue. I'm mentioning this because that was my issue with Joker, was the cultural backlash that either was supposed to happen or the way I was supposed to feel, plus the marketing definitely uh, put a damper in my sales, with watching it. Now, I will say this, despite the fact that Disney pays me to talk shit about DC. By the way, they don't. Um, I was really excited for this movie. Um, I was super pumped. So there's a lesson learned in that. One is, yes,
Mhm.
do not watch trailers. I am learning that slowly
It's all right.
from you. However, now I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I lived for trailers because
Oh gosh, yeah.
there wasn't an internet where you could watch it
Right.
and break it down, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
so
We didn't have any of that as kids, and you if you didn't see them in the movie theater, they were gone.
exactly.
Like,
So
or in
yeah,
front of a VHS tape for something maybe you'd see again because yeah, like I remember the Super Bowl. Like the Super Bowl trailers mattered because there was no YouTube, and if you
right.
missed them, they never played those 30-second $2 million spots in the movie theater ever.
That's right.
And that
Exactly.
and also this is in a different time where they just they didn't oversell movies like they used to. Or
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
they oversell movies now, unlike what they used to, because you had those trailers back in the day where you just show a glimmer of a scene, throw a few names in the screen, and that's all it took. I'll be the Marvel guy. Did you ever see that? I think it's the Super Bowl teaser. Did you see the Super Bowl teaser for Ang Lee's Hulk, where it's Eric Bana at the sink kind of doing a
Yes.
monologue, and that scene's not in the movie whatsoever, but that
Right.
is all it takes to sell it. Is this guy is getting angry and he's going to turn green, but all you see is his eye, and then he busts the kitchen sink out of the house and you don't even see the real deal. But my goodness, are you like, oh damn, I cannot wait to see that movie. And then of course the movie gets there, and obviously Ang Lee's got hits and misses with the way he tells that movie, but yeah, what has made me stop with the trailers is they oversell. They oversell and they over manipulate and they just show too much. Probably because they're made by people who didn't make the movie, and that doesn't help either.
Yeah. The last I can honestly say this. I remember this.
Hmm.
The last time I saw a trailer that got me excited, but also told me nothing about the movie, was Miami Vice.
There you go.
Michael
Hmm.
Mann's Miami Vice, because all it was they were playing that Linkin Park Jay-Z song, which is actually
Yep,
pretty cool, even though I'm not really a big Jay-Z or Linkin Park guy.
I hear you.
And all it did was show flashes of them driving around Miami,
Uh huh.
dancing in clubs, and it just said Miami Vice coming soon.
Yeah.
And I remember that's kind of the last time I ever remember seeing a trailer where I was like, I want to see that because it looks cool and I don't know anything about it.
Hmm.
Marvel is getting better at that because, like,
Yeah.
a couple of the upcoming shows, I like. I had no idea what was happening in WandaVision. Like, the
Yeah. The TV
trailers
ones have
gave
been
me
good. Hmm.
the Falcon Winter Soldier gave me nothing away, and Loki to this day I could not tell you what's going to happen in
No,
Loki. I have
that looks
no idea.
random and
So
crazy. That one. The
so
movies I can't say do as good. Like I think I've seen too much of Black Widow already.
yeah, I have taken your advice, even though it's
Yeah.
pained me. I have not watched a single Black Widow trailer, so I have no
Okay.
clue what it's about, and I'm very excited about that because it's going to give me, because unlike some of the other stuff, like Captain Marvel when that came out, Ant Man and the
Hmm.
Wasp, I overwatched those so much that
Yeah.
there was not as much surprise. So I think trailers are getting better,
Ooh,
but to
I think they're getting
me,
worse.
but here's the thing: I am taking your advice and not watching them.
Yeah.
So I
Choose
guess
your
the
spots. I guess my advice is choose your spots. If there's a movie doesn't need you don't need help to see, and for me, I'm easy. You had me at James Gunn. You had me at
right,
one other, like some small random detail or the log line little plot summary. That's all I need. Some of
yeah,
these, like I watch a lot of trailers for little indies that I know nothing about. Some
right,
tiny little
right.
indie movie because I kind of need to know a little bit of what I'm going into, or like if it's going to be worth it or not. How cheap is this thing? But the big stuff that I know I'm going to see no matter what, like Cruella, I know I'm going to see it. Don't need it. Didn't know the trailer. In the Heights, I just watched the musical last week, and I've never seen the Broadway show, and I kind of don't. It's a musical. I'm going to be there. It should be pretty decent. And
Right.
then the movie blew me away because I had never even seen the show and then never saw the trailer. So choose your spots is my best advice.
Definitely, definitely. I'm the same way. So I think as we exit this episode in terms of
Hmm.
Joker, the lesson learned is that Joker was definitely a better experience for you, probably because you were not attached to the marketing or the hype machine
I agree with that.
as I was.
Hmm.
So I am willing on this cinephile hissy fit thing, even though I still hate the movie. I I am willing to admit that perhaps my viewing was compromised slightly. Um,
And I'm
I
willing to admit that you're very right about the outrage that Laxon isn't there.
okay. Well, hey,
Yeah.
look at that. We're friends in the end.
Aw.
Ah.
Dylan, you son of a bitch. We need our little high five with the muscles.
So, yeah, let's go ahead and do you have? I wanted
Mhm.
to start this. Is there? I like to support our fellow podcasts. Is
All
there
right.
any podcast you would like to recommend that Cinephile Hissy Fit fans, if there's any fans out there, hopefully there is, could listen to that you think would be worth their time?
Ooh, well, I tell you what, there's many, so I'll have a new one for weeks. I'll start with a place I used to write and work for a little bit as a columnist, and I've been a guest in their show many times. The Feelin' Film podcast. It's a couple of guys in Seattle and a gentleman in Arkansas, and they try to go towards the feels of films more than the technical merit. Now they still get into technical merit, but they talk about connections and connecting points, and I like their work. They do a good job. I'm in their little Facebook group, and I'm one of the moderators there and a former columnist. I used to write a what we learned this week because they've got the teacher and the lesson thing going on, where I kind of just took Hollywood, kind of the Hollywood headlines of the week, and kind of broke them down into like kind of looking at the business behind the scenes a little because I kind of had that press angle and then also the observant movie business guy angle, and so yeah, I'll drop the Feeling Film as a recommend for
Okay.
Aaron White, Celeste Davis, and Patrick Hicks.
Nice. Since I just came up with this idea 13 seconds ago and I didn't really think about it, I'm not going to. I'm going to give a recommendation, but it's probably perhaps for a bigger podcast I think they still deserve a shout out,
Absolutely.
because it is horror based, and I think horror films. That's one thing. Me and Don. Hopefully, in the future, I'm going to get Don to
Ooh.
dip into some of these horror franchises because I really love horror franchises. But there is a horror podcast on the Bloody Disgusting Network. Bloody Disgusting is obviously a pretty big horror news website. It is called Horror Queers. It is hosted by Joe Lipset and Trace Thurman, and they are two openly gay men who discuss horror films from a queer angle.
How
Um,
about
and
that?
I and I find it very fascinating because they find a lot of things that I never would have thought of. For example, they when they reviewed Scream, they talked about the potential homoerotic subtext of the two killers, how
Mm,
there could be some
certainly.
manipulation in play there that is kind of an undercurrent of serial killer history anyway. Um, so they do kind of take that. They also do some contemporary reviews without any angles or anything, but I find it a very fascinating podcast. I am part of their Patreon. They're really good. So next time I'm going to find a little bit more of an indie one to do, but I've been listening to Horror Queers pretty much nonstop now for the last 2 months, and I find them really fascinating, and I fully support their podcast.
How about that? Hit us with the outro, Will.
You got it. Follow us on Twitter at Cinephile Fits and on Facebook at Cinephile Hissy Fits Podcast. Also, find us both, me and Don, on Letterboxd. We get most of our ideas from Letterboxd because Don has like top 100 lists and stuff like that. So I just go hate, 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 hate,
Hmm.
and then we decide to make episodes, and then we realize that there's no episodes of what I love, and I just become this big hate monger. Uh,
Just as we planned in this show, let me tell you.
exactly. Maybe, just maybe, we haven't decided yet, 10 episodes in, if we will post a poll matching this episode for your listeners to weigh in on who you think made the most compelling argument to win this Cinephile Hissy Fit. But like the end of Robot Jocks by Stuart Gordon, we
Ooh.
found ourselves, the final shot of this podcast about Joker was us taking hands a friendly handshake together as opposed to smashing each other to bits.
How about that?
We want to thank you so much for your captive audience and social media participation. As you can tell, I'm a genius improviser. Cinephile Hissy Fits is a 25YL media podcast. It's brought to you by ruminationsradionetwork.com. Please visit, rate, review, and subscribe. We are only 199 out of 200 reviews away from Rotten Tomatoes territory. So, if you could throw one at us, that'd be great. If you enjoyed the show, we have much more where that came from. We're already looking into having a guest host in the future. We're just trying to work on the format. We've got a list of people we want to have on the show. So we know in the future we're going to have some very interesting co-hosts with us. We also are praying to get some great guests. And when I say praying, it's mostly just me thirsting after beautiful women that I would love to see on the podcast, namely Samantha Robinson from The Love Witch, who replied to one of our tweets once, and I exploded. And then also, I've added to our list. I've been sending Don this. I've been sending Don random photos on Instagram. Sissy Stringer, who played...
Safe search off, by the way. Good call.
Safe search off. Who did she play in Mortal Kombat?
Melina.
Melina. Yes, yeah. I don't care that her mouth was messed up. That woman is fine. I would love to have her on the podcast. Probably after we receive cease and desist orders saying please stop tweeting us and please stop bothering us, we'll probably have other wonderful guests on the show. For now, all of our episodes are available on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere you find your favorite shows.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I'm glad we could come to some kind of agreement. How about it?
What's up, gang? This is Hoptimus. You've been listening to one of the great new podcasts from Ruminations Radio Network. If you want some more tasty sound vibes, come check out my new podcast, The Retro Futurist Culture, where we talk about alternate timelines, cyberpunk, anime, and other crazy worlds. If that does not strike your fancy, we have plenty of other great shows at ruminationsradionetwork.com.